Hello everyone and welcome to another comic book video. I'm glad to be back. Just because of the weather and some other things going on last week, I wasn't able to do a video last week. And if you're watching this video, it's going to be coming out a little bit later than usual. We usually try and have them out on Tuesdays, but just because of the weather and some other things going on, it just wasn't possible. We usually try to film these videos at the library. We weren't just able to do that just because the library being closed because of the weather, so we're actually filming in a different location today. But I thought today I would just talk about some of the different ways you can try and preserve your comic books. So if you get a collection, one of the things you usually want to do is try and keep those comics just clean, just try and preserve them, make sure they don't get easily damaged. So the main way that you can preserve your comics is by bagging and boarding them. So what you do is you take a bag and board. These are usually ones you can buy at a comic book shop or even online. With the boards, a lot of times too, there will be a shiny side and a dull side. And the side you usually want to use when you place the comic books is the shiny side. So you just can go ahead, slide it in like that. You can also get different sizes, types of bags as well. Is you have like Golden Age and stuff, because they came out, they were usually a bigger size. So you can get different types. You can get ones for magazines as well. So like that, and then of course, you would oftentimes tape it on the back. So when you do the tape though, make sure you choose a tape that's not very sticky or very resistant. You want something that you can easily pull on and off if you ever need to get into the comic, or if you're thinking about selling it, or you just want to even read it again. Just because we put like a very strong tape on there, it can cause problems to you trying to get the tape off. It could actually lead to sometimes with damaging the comic if you use too much force trying to get it. But some use tape. There are also some other ones, and I brought this in too, that are actually self-sealing on the back. You can buy those as well, where they'll actually be self-sealing. The problem is eventually if you keep opening up the flaps, the seal will eventually wear out and you will have to tape it. So that's just another type. And then the ones I tend to use a lot of times are ones called polypropylene bags, which are what this is right here. Another type of bag that is very popularly used is called Mylar. They're a little more expensive than the ones I tend to use, but a lot of collectors like them because they seem to think there's a better quality. This is a Mylar bag here. You see it seems to make the colors pop more on the comic, just make it stand out more. It's a nicer quality, but they are a little more expensive. The polypropylene bags, you can usually buy a stack of them, like 100 for like $7 or $8. With the Mylars, they tend to be somewhat more expensive, but again, different quality. Another thing you can do to help preserve comics, and this is something that I do sometimes, is you can get what's called a top loader. The very reason that you load it from the top. These are just an extra way to try and protect your comics. Just provides a little extra covering, just makes it a little extra resistant. The problem with a lot of times with these bags too, they can still get crushed together. You can still get marks or something if you're not careful. With these just provide an extra layer of protection to it. So these are top loaders. And what you want to do with comics after you bag and board them is you want to put them in a comic book box. Now you can buy these at a comic book shop or even online too. And what you do is you go ahead and you can fill up the box. Just make sure you don't put too many in and make it too tight, because then what you can have a problem is you'll actually have a crease that would actually start going down here if the comics are too tight together, where the end here will actually push in the comics together. So right here, you don't want to see a bend right here if you push the comics too much together. So, and then a final way that you can actually preserve your comics, and also the most expensive one here, is of course by having them slabbed. So the only time you should really do this is if the comic you have is worth a lot of value. Getting a comic book slab starts usually around like $40 and goes up from there depending on what the comic is. So what you want to do is only use this if it's going to be something that's going to be fairly valuable, fairly rare, something that you want. The idea when slabbing is not only do you get it graded, but then the company will put it in the slab to lock in that grade, as it were, and also provide some extra protection with this plastic here. Also, when you're storing your comics, you want to make sure you keep them in a nice area that's going to be somewhat nice and dry. You don't want them to be anywhere where it's going to be damp or where there's going to be great temperature changes. So keeping them out like in a shed outside, especially when the changes in weather from like winter to summer and stuff, can actually be very damaging to your comics. So keep them in an area where they're going to be kind of nice and dry and safe. Also, too, you don't want your comics just laying out in the light or in the sun for very long periods of time, because that will actually start causing the colors to fade. So you actually want to keep them in a semi-dark area too. There's no problem with actually having some of your comics out, because I know some collectors like to have them on display, but what they'll do is they'll change them out. They won't keep the same ones on display all the time, because that light eventually will start damaging the comic. So just do a rotation. So that's what I have for today, just doing some basics on how to preserve your comics. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.